Hey, everybody, welcome back to View from the Top podcast, where we help growth-minded men who desire momentum in their business, their family, and their finances get through the valleys and up the mountain to their very own view from the top. Hey, as we get into 2024, we're second week in already, we all have some level of ongoing stress. And today, Big A and I are going to share some good and not so good personal experiences with managing stress and how we both learned from trial and error, as well as what we've learned from having good advisors around us over the years. So let's get Big A in the studio. Big A, welcome.
Wally, hope things are going good. Nice and chilly here in Nashville, Tennessee. We're not too far apart. I used to ask you how it was in Michigan, and now we share the same weather.
There's a mountain between us. That's about it.
I know. You know, we haven't talked about it at all, but back a month ago in December, we had a pretty destructive tornado come through Hendersonville, and it came right between your house and my house. And then Anthony Witt, one of our facilitators, lives between me and you, and it just skirted by him. It's like, well, God protected us. I'm telling you, talking about stressful.
I don't want to take the credit for a tornado here, but it literally was a quarter mile from our house is where it came through. It was in our neighborhood between ourselves and the main road. And my gosh, just and even the damage here, I've never been in one before. First time for me. So even the damage here compared to like other parts of Tennessee, very, very minimal. But man, just so glad, looking back that there weren't as many people were injured that could have been. And most of it was, building damage. And
it's like it went right down Main Street.
31. It took 31 like all the way down pretty much.
Yeah, it did. It did. Very, very unfortunate. 6 people, I think, in Tennessee lost their lives.
Yeah,
with that.
It could have been so much more. My goodness.
Clarksville got hit really, really bad. And it was bad. But talking about stress, I got a question I need to ask you because we've talked about this a couple of times, not very intentionally, but you're talking about a lot of stress. Robin and I went on a trip. When we got back, I didn't pay any attention, pulled up to the parking garage, parked the car, and I was leaving, and they rung me up, and they said, be $180. I said, what? To leave my car here for a week is $180? And they said, hey, it's Nashville. Welcome to Nashville. And I know that you and I've had a couple of discussions around this, but I'm just curious. I don't know that I'm changing my mind, but you'll get family members and, friends and things like that to carry you and Sonia to the airport. And I know other people that you'll do that for. What is your position on that in doing that? Then I'm going to share. You're going to go first. Then I'm going to share mine.
All right. So I don't like to ask. I'll just put that out there. So we live, 25 minutes, 25 miles, whatever it is, away from the airport. It's pretty much all highway. So it's pretty quick, easy in and out. But obviously the parking, situation there, it costs money, man. And it seems like, man, I could use that money in so many different other ways, especially if you travel much. So if you're gone, if you traveled 4 weeks out of the year, you took a trip each time and it was $180. You probably parked in the cheap parking too. So I'm guessing. So if you,
I don't know how to take that comment, but I did park in B. I did park in B. $30 a day if you park in the garage. And I'm like, I drop Robin off, I drop her bags off. And then I let the little shuttle bus bring me over there. Yeah. So I am trying to be a good steward.
That's right.
Just so you know.
Right. So my point in saying that is that if you park in the garage or even, at Nashville Airport Lot A, it's even more expensive. And so, you're $200 for a week and you multiply that by 4, it's $1,000. Now, that's not a ton of money in the big scheme of things. Probably not. But I don't like asking people, but yet I have a hard time just spending the money. So here's my trick. If I can get somebody to take me to the airport that I can have a conversation with about our trip on the way to the airport and our conversation about our trip on the way home, then I might ask them if they'll take us to the airport. If it's 2 days or 3 days, like a weekend thing, I probably won't. I'll probably just pay the money and be done with it. But if it's longer than that, I don't want to spend the money, so I will ask. I don't like to ask. But I will do it for other people as well. I wish more people would ask sometimes, honestly. It's not a bad thing. It's easy in and out.
Yeah, here I'm going to state my position now. So we don't have tons of money and you don't either, but we got enough that we can pay for parking, right? Sure. It's not going to alter anything that we do. And this is for me, Wally, don't get mad at me, but here's the thing. It's like, we're saying that my $180 is more important than your time. You're getting up at 4 a.m. You're going to come and get me. You're going to take me to the airport, use your car, use your gas. Then you got to come back and get me. And then Robin and I's plane was delayed, and now you may be sitting there waiting for another hour. Then you got to take me back with your car and your gas and inconvenience your afternoon. You can't plan anything that afternoon. And for me, it's just like, how can I impose on somebody's couple of hours at 4 or 5 in the morning too, when you got these red-eye flights? Robin and I talked about it, but when they hit me with that $180, I was like, maybe I need to reconsider this. But
so a question for you though, is it about you imposing on other people? Or is it about the fact that, man, if you ask that of other people might ask that of you, and you don't want to give up your time?
No. Oh, not at all. No, I don't feel that way at all.
So I can still call you to take me to the airport, even though you'll never ask me?
That way I'll happily take you. I will. I'll happily take you. But I feel like that we're saying my money's more important than your time.
So you can look at it a different way.
I feel like.
Listen, here's the reality. We don't help each other out enough in our society anymore. We don't.
Yeah.
Like, when's the last time someone asked you to come over and help them cut up a tree, or help them, fix a hole in the wall, or back in the day, I remember my dad, we would go almost every weekend, not every weekend, it probably wasn't that, probably once a month or something, but we'd go do a house project with somebody in our church, like on a regular basis. We did some of that stuff, and we just don't do that anymore. And so,
yeah, we miss out on community a little bit.
What are ways we can help people?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my take.
Yeah. Well, you'll go buy a tool at Lowe's, and I got every tool known to man here in my garage.
What are you talking about? Well, that's a whole different topic.
I want you to come borrow my tools too. Hey, listen, let's jump in. Let's jump into stress now that we're all amped up.
Now you got me stressed out, thinking
we're ready to go.
What tool did I use that you said I could use? I don't know what you're talking about.
You've been here a year and a half, and I know that you've had to have bought some tool in that length of time. All right. Hey, we got a great guy in ISI, Michael Ganschow. Michael's a great guy, man. I love that guy. He is so insightful. He's such a great young man. He's married. He's got 2 beautiful kids. He lives just outside of Nolensville, which is just outside of Nashville, not too terribly far. He's a professional. Michael's a senior tax manager, and he specializes in tax compliance, which is not one of my favorite topics.
Doesn't sound that exciting, but obviously it's for him.
He's good. Yeah, this guy's good at it, man. He helps major corporations work through tax compliance. He's really, really good at it.
That's great.
Michael, this morning in our mastermind call, had a really good question that really resonated with everybody. And he said, how do you manage the ongoing stress in your life? Man, just a simple question. It was a mic drop in the room. 10 guys, successful business owners, were in the room, and they were like, yeah, man, I know exactly what you're feeling. And Michael said that he's got a lot of current demands with 2 little children, right? Not married too terribly long. And he said he's stressed to his limit. He said, I'm just there. And I don't know some of the things to do. And I want to say right out of the gate, Wally, just straight up, 63 years of experience, stress never disappears completely. It just doesn't. As much as I had hoped, as much as I'd wanted it to, as owning businesses and making a little bit of money. And I thought, man, when I get this much money, my life will be stress-free. Well, that's just not true. It's just not. And when I get my kids raised, then all the stress goes away. And then you got stressful things related to adult children. Then your grandchildren come along and your stress starts all over again. I don't want to paint a bleak picture here, but what I do want to do is to paint a picture to help us learn how to manage stress, because it is not going away. I honestly will have to say that last year, 2023, was probably the most stressful year of my career. And it wasn't even business related. I handle a lot of business stress really good because I've had to for over 4 decades now. For me, it was multiple family members' health challenges, and some very, very close family members, had, and one of them was, my daughter. I talked about that. And one is my mom had a lot of challenges, that she had to work through, and it requires a lot of energy and seeing after and prayer, and it's just stressful. When they walk in and they go, hey, this is a life-threatening situation. Well, your stress goes to a whole nother level, right? I do want to say a couple of encouraging words about that, though, right out of the gate as we get started. I'm a firm believer in what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I mean, there's no question about, you'll learn how to cope with it. You'll learn how to deal with it. And as you mature in business, you'll soon discover that normally it's not as bad as you first think. Like the situation, whatever you're confronted with right now, and I want you to lean in and listen to me just for a second. Like, I can't identify with some of the stress that you're going through, ever who the listener is right now. Some of it's really, really bad. You got terrible health challenges, relationship problems. There's financial devastation going on. There's economic downturn looming. There's just a lot going on right now that's really, really stressful. And my dad would always say some pretty cool things related to this. He would say that if money can fix it, it's really not a problem. But money can't fix relationships. It can't fix terminal illnesses, and it can't fix you spiritually. And so these are some of the things that we've really got to dial into. And we do at Iron Sharpens Iron. We talk about all these things at length. I remember my grandfather would always say that your number one priority needs to be your health, because if you lose that, then you've lost everything. And so I want to encourage you to really take care of yourself. And listen, I'm preaching to myself too. I'm not just out here pointing a finger, because it's one of the most difficult things for me to do is to manage exercise and manage my diet and things like that. It's something that takes constant work for me. Like me working, I don't need any accountability. I need accountability for not working is what I need. Right. But the diet and things like that, taking care of my body. And some of the people have said something to me recently about, we really need to take care of our bodies. We really need to do that. And so I started thinking through some of the things that I need to do, and I'm making some real concerted efforts at, managing diet and managing my physical exercise and things like that. But some of the things in life that we're just going to have to deal with is stress. And I had a guy call me last November in my office, and I was talking to him. He said, Big A, he said, I want to know how you deal with stress. This guy's a real estate investor, and he does real big projects. And this was a big project he was working on, multi 7-figure project he was working on. And I said, Tommy, you know what I'm going to say. And he said, yeah, I know, but I want you to say it anyway. I don't want to go all spiritual on you here, but the truth is the way I manage stress is faith and confidence in Christ. I'm Christian by faith. And so I'm a work in progress. I don't have that all figured out either. I'm constantly working on that. But, I can lay it down to the Heavenly Father, and I can just say, hey, I can't deal with this. I mean, I can't walk through this alone. And we did that last year, when my daughter was going through these health challenges. I was like, I can't fix this. No amount of money, Wally, was going to fix that. I couldn't throw any and everything I've got collectively. I could have sold everything I got, and I couldn't have fixed that. And that becomes like, because I'm a control freak anyway. And so that really even made it more difficult. And so for me, placing my confidence and faith in Christ, and I'm not imposing that on any of the listeners. I'm just saying this is our podcast, and I'm sharing how we here elect to deal with those things. And one of my favorite verses is James 1:2-4. God said, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. And I want to tell you, man, when I read that verse, my stress all but goes away. I mean, it's just like, you know what? He's wanting to carry that burden, and I'm going to continually give it to him. And it's not a one-time thing. It's every time you've got to turn it over and give it to him. So, man, we're going to dive in, Wally, a little bit more on stress today. And Michael, hopefully this helps you and answer some of your questions as we dive into this topic of stress and how to manage it.
Yeah, that verse, James, that you just read, it's one of those things where you read something from Scripture that was written, a couple thousand years ago or more, and they're dealing with the same things back then.
They are.
That we're dealing with today. Like there's really nothing new under the sun. And so there's hope in that. Like a lot of people like, oh man, that's devastating if nothing's new and you can't like, and it's like, well, no, that's not how it works. That's not how God works. I have found myself with stress. I have found myself thinking that there's some level of utopia that we reach, that somehow stress is going to just not be there. You mentioned earlier, like the older that you get, you think, oh, it's just going to not be there. Like, why would that be there? And it's not. That isn't how way it works. There's no like, someday there's going to be nothing. And I think, even biblically, that's a necessary element to our humanity, the way that we're designed, that draws us right back to Christ, back to God. And so I'm grateful for that. As much as I don't like it, I am grateful. I'm grateful for it. And I haven't always felt that way. There's, it doesn't matter with stress. Like Michael, being a tax guy, I can imagine like we're in January, so he's ramping up, man. And there's going to be a lot of stress that's going to be coming these next 4 months, right?
Right.
So it doesn't matter his profession. Doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur and you're out building a pressure washing business. Doesn't matter if you got a manufacturing company you're running with a couple hundred employees. Anything in between. Like it doesn't matter your profession, doesn't matter your job title. Are there levels of stress? Are there levels of consequence that comes from potential stress? Sure. Right. So, but the reality is, I found it interesting. Somebody said something to me the other day. It was on a mastermind call, and it was around the idea of, I can't remember the details, but here's the premise. Premise was that like their child at like 6 years old was feeling this emotion about trust from like their parents. That feeling that they have is the same feeling as a 50-year-old adult that I would have if I was having trust challenges with, my team members or my employees or a client, right? Or someone in ministry. Like the consequences are different, but you feel it in principle exactly the same. So it doesn't matter which title is. It doesn't matter how much money you have. Man, have I learned that, in the past few years. What your net worth is, how old your kids are, how young they are. Stress is, it can always be present. We have more at times and we have less at times. We learn how to manage it better at times, and sometimes we forget and we fall back into some unhealthy habits and mindsets. And so we need to be reminded. It's why we're doing this podcast today. It's not because, oh man, I'd never thought about managing stress before. No, it's just, we all need to be reminded.
A reminder.
Yeah. And I'm still learning. I need to be reminded. I love these podcasts because we get to invest time studying these topics out, talking about them, sharing our experiences of others. And it's like that whole thing about, I think often I get more out of this than maybe our listeners do. Because I get to focus on it longer, but hopefully.
Yeah, well, it helps us, right? It helps us. Yeah. And so even going through this and talking, doing some research and, you and I having a discussion, it helps me to put that stress in a proper place. Yeah. But Wally, what gives you the most stress? Like, what is the thing that you're like, man, that thing really wires me up?
Yeah, I would have to say it's myself. For me, relationships, things externally don't really bother me too much. We mentioned in I think it was earlier this episode or last episode, I can't remember. We talked about the storms that hit, Tennessee coming through back in December. And even those things don't really stress me out. They don't. Relationship stuff doesn't stress me out too much. Money stuff, even when I've not had it and when I've had it, it has an effect. But the one thing that stresses me out the most is my own self. I get in my head way too much. And I overthink things way too much. And that creates the majority of my stress that I experience.
It's also a strength, though, because you really think through things, right? So I think there's a balance in walking with you daily. I can see those things and I can see when you overdo it. And let's just move on. Like, we're good.
Yeah.
And then there's other times I'm like, I'm glad we stayed there for a minute, because it helps us be better later because you've stitched it together, you've thought multi-layers deep. And I don't do that, right? That's not mine. For me, it is the relationship thing. Because if there's any relationships I've got that are damaged in any way, it creates 10 times the stress for me of anything else in my life. When I think about Robin, and some of y'all are going to go, well, you're crazy, Big A. But like if I leave out of the house, yeah, I am most stuff. But if I leave out of the house and there's any tension between Robin and I, like we got into a little fuss, I got to turn around, go back into the house. I work from home, so I've built an office on the side of my home. So, it's 15 seconds back into the house, and I'll go up and hug her and say, hey, I'm sorry. Or she'll say, no, I shouldn't have said that. I'm wrong. Like, I can't function. And then Brooke and Holly, my two daughters, man, if I think they're mad at me or upset at me, it kills me until we get it right. And then my grandkids came along, and now we've got them from 7 years old to 21. And if I think that our relationship is strained in any way, I got to get them on the phone. I got to go see them. I got to call them, right? We got to work through that. Matter of fact, I think now my kids have gotten at an age where I'm more concerned about my grandkids than the kids. Don't tell my kids I said that, but I think I'm there though. But it's the relationship piece that really causes me the stress. I don't know what it is for you, the listener, but I think it's healthy for you to identify that. For not to stuff it aside and not just tuck it away and not deal with it. I think it's important that we learn to manage stress in a healthy way because we've already said 10 times, it's not going away. And so if we'll really focus on that and learn how to manage it, learn to identify it, I think it'll be helpful.
Hey, if we can manage stress in a healthy way, we're going to run through some of these things now that we've discovered for ourselves, things we've learned from others as well. But if there's a way to manage stress in a healthy way, does that mean that there's such a thing as healthy stress? Is all stress bad?
No, I don't. I think there's some stress that's very healthy. Yeah, no, I absolutely do. I think that the fox after you sometimes keeps you motivated, keeps you going. And I think stress can, I operate at a much higher level with a degree of stress. If I don't have any and there's no deadlines, I operate pretty good by deadlines. It's like, man, I got to get that done. Otherwise, I'll procrastinate and I'll set it aside or I won't do it. But if I've got dates, that's kind of a level of stress. It's like Michael was talking about this morning in the mastermind call. He said, everything I deal with is dated, right? He said, I'm dealing with the federal government and everything I've got has got deadlines and I'm dealing with hundreds of clients. And so they've all got deadlines in that level of stress though. But at the same time, if we didn't have any of that stress, it'd be like, hey, I'll get you my tax stuff when I need, it's whenever. It's like, no, we got to get it done. So yeah, I think we can adopt some stress as healthy to help motivate us.
I agree with that. I think the idea of, we talk about emotional stress, but if you put it in a very logical, functional place. Like, for example, think of you've had, hey, there's a lot of stress on that wall. Think of a building, right? There's a lot of stress on that structure. There's a lot of, you see something bowing out a little bit, right? There's a lot of stress and tension there. Pain, somebody said this, I didn't make this up, but pain's an indication that something needs to change. And stress, I think, causes something uncomfortable in us, like to your point, that can really encourage us to make something different. And if we ignore it, that's typically when stress builds. It becomes an unhealthy part of our lives. Physically, it can affect us physically, our heart, and other parts of our relationally, it can affect that negatively. And so there's so many things that a healthy stress, if not managed well, can turn into something really bad. So hopefully some of these things we talk about today will help us manage it.
The other thing, if you wait and procrastinate, it's going to be twice as hard to deal with. The consequences historically have been worse as a result of prolonging it. And so I want to encourage you right now today, if there's things that you need to deal with that you're procrastinating on, all it's going to do is cost you more. There's going to be more consequences as a result of it. You need to man up today and go deal with it. So Wally, what are some of the things that you do to help manage stress?
Yeah, so I've not always really good at this one in terms of it's a daily part of my life, but there have been enough times in my life where I've recognized that regular physical activity, first of all, physical activity can help de-stress just in general, right? And so I've noticed for myself, my wife, even Sonia, she's mentioned different times, hey, you need to go take a walk. Like, go get some energy out. You need to go to the gym, right? Like, there's not something I can do about something in a particular moment. It's creating some stress. And I need some type of a physical outlet to be able to get rid of that. And so while that can solve it for that particular moment, at times in my life when I've been on a routine physical activity, then I noticed that my overall stress level comes down. And I think physical activity, I don't want to stretch this too far, but we've talked about, intimacy and sex lives in our marriages before. And I think that's a physical part of that helps with stress. I am not in any way saying that that's that's why you should have sex. It's just to reduce stress. It's way more intimate and emotionally relational than that. But it's part of how God's created us for sure. Right? That's part of it. So I think when you've got that physical activity, you start to look better, you feel better, and you just have a better outlook in general on life when you feel good physically.
I work a lot better. Honestly, when I get a little bit heavy and I'm fatigued or I don't go exercise and I gain a little bit of weight, I don't perform at the level that I'm not as snappy. I'm not as let's go. I'm not as clear. Like there's a real thing to that. When you don't feel good about yourself, it's hard to feel good about doing the other activities in your life.
And it kind of seems counterintuitive, but another thing you can do too, as we talked about physical activity, kind of the opposite of that almost is some type of physical and mental, even emotional relaxation. I've discovered for myself that one thing that I did it this morning, and again, I'm probably 2 to 3 days a week on this. I've not gotten the habit every day, but when I do some type of a simple exercise, a simple stretching routine in the morning, I'm not a yoga hokey pokey kind of stuff with yoga by any means, but some of the stretching techniques and that are used in yoga practice, man, they are so helpful. I do there's a 20-minute simple routine that I try to do in the mornings. Makes a huge difference on just how my body starts the day, right? It doesn't start up tense and get out of bed and you're like, oh man, I gotta go. It's even some simple relaxation techniques, resting, deep breathing, breathing through the nose and letting it out holding it for a couple seconds and letting it out. Man, it's just, that physical part of that can be very helpful. Just some stretching and relaxing. And then I'm a big journaler. I've mentioned that before. And so journaling things out, being able to get them out of my head. I know if I haven't journaled for about 4 or 5 days, I can tell you mentally, the stress starts to build up. If I can just get it written out, then man, God just uses that to be able to just bring that stress level down for me.
Wally, do you realize now that the amount of hate mail I'm going to get because you called somebody's yoga hokey pokey? Do you realize the hate mail that the person that's sitting there with their legs crossed and their fingers touched and they're chanting and smelling incense, listening to the podcast, how much hate mail I'm going to get? I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, well, the email address is pod,
These are great.
pod@viewfromthetop.com. So let us know.
Right, there you go.
Willing to take it all.
Tell Wally. That's right. That's good.
That's funny. That's funny. I just think overall, maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Talked about physical activity, resting appropriately, stretching, journaling, eating healthy, right? I mean, we all know how we feel when, I can't even imagine what I would feel like today. Can you imagine what it would be like today if you drove through a McDonald's drive-thru and you bought a Big Mac, a large fry, and a milkshake? And you ate that.
Man, you're making me hungry.
Can you imagine what that would feel like to your body though? Oh my gosh. It would feel so inflated and bloated and you just feel terrible.
Wally, I got to own this. I got to own it. You convicted me right here. Robin and I went on a cruise back in December, gone for a week. And the last day on Celebrity, they always do an all-you-can-eat lobster buffet.
Nice.
Now, you just think about that for a minute. Yeah, but I'm going to tell you something. A bucket of crab claws and a dozen shrimp, and 6 lobster tail make you feel exactly like you just described.
Okay, all right.
I was miserable. Wally. Hey, I didn't know until last night, though, that I was doing a little research when I was thinking through some of the things that we were going to talk about today, how much sodium is in lobster.
Oh, wow.
600 milligrams in 3 ounces. So I had about 3,600 milligrams of sodium. And Robin goes, you wonder why your leg got bigger. You swole up. Because sodium. Hey, listen, some of the things for me, though, talking about managing this is time management. Like I've got to really pay attention to that. As you start growing and, we've done a number of guest podcasting and we have guest podcasts and everybody's coming through Nashville, right? They want to call you. They want you to come and eat or, they want you to hang out and things like that. And I love it. And always invite me. I don't know if I'll always be able to come, but I've got to organize the things that I've got to do every day or I get really stressed out without a question. But the bigger thing is I've got to set the priorities for the benefit of the organization, right? First and foremost, I've got to set the priorities for Robin and I. And then I've got to go, okay, what's best use of my time for View from the Top? Like, is it this or that? Whatever that is, I've got to really set those priorities to manage my time. And then I've got to create a schedule to manage my time effectively. And when I do that, it reduces stress and really helps me not to feel overwhelmed. And I want to just tell you straight up, we don't probably do this enough, but we've got the most amazing team here that helps me do my time management. Wally from you and then Brooke and Romley and Jenny and Ems. I mean, they help me so much in managing my calendar and helping me understand exactly where I need to be at what time. And I don't feel as overwhelmed. You know what's so cool? The other day, one of our assistants clocked how far it was from different appointments for me, and she's not local. And so I thought, man, that was such a home run. I was so proud because she's like, Big A, you don't have time to get to your next appointment. And I'm like, man, I would just hug you right now if I could get my arms on you because you're really thinking ahead, and it helps me not to be stressed, right? And so I got in the car and I was able to drive to the next appointment. The other thing is seeking support. And Wally, from being around me for years and years and years, I think out loud. And I need people around me. Like when I say something, that doesn't mean I'm necessarily wanting to do that, but I've got to talk to friends and family members out loud. Like I'll go, and you've even challenged me on it. It's like, do you need to talk to everybody about all those decisions? And I'm like, well, not everybody, but people I trust. I really want to go to them and I want to seek their advice. I need to get their support. I need to make sure, because I think there is a great value in seeking the counsel of the multitude. It's like we can really find solace in the fact that when multiple people that you trust have some similar idea, then the chances of that being remotely better is much better. And so, yeah, I have to do that. The other thing is, and I don't make any apologies for this either, is, I have to see people sometimes that is professional, like a therapist. I think about people like Anthony Witt and Dr. Andy Garrett in our organization, that they're amazing. They're family practice kind of folks. Anthony's wife does counseling and Anthony does counseling, does a lot for us in Iron Sharpens Iron. Floyd Dawson is a great resource that we've sent people to. I've gone to for decades. Robin and I go together when we are at a crossroads and we're like, we can't solve this thing. It minimizes the stress because we have a third person that's educated, they're experienced, and there's nothing wrong, I promise you, with seeing a therapist or a counselor that can help you work through these challenges. And a lot of very successful people I know go when things are good. They don't have to be bad. It's like, I don't want to miss anything. And I want to make sure that I'm really shored up. And then sharing my feelings with other people can really provide emotional relief and get a different perspective. Because for me, being around other people, their perspective is the most valuable asset out there. It's like, man, I didn't even know that. And I didn't even think about that being something that was so valuable, but it's other people's perspective. And just remember that there's different strokes for different folks, right? There's things that work better for some people than others. And I just think it's important that you really figure out what's best for you and manage your stress effectively. Wally, I don't know if you have anything additional as we close out this episode, but I feel less stressful as a result of going through this. And I don't know if you do or not, but before I kind of wrap things up, any additional thoughts you've got related to this?
Yeah, I think we said this a little bit earlier is not being afraid of stress in terms of like, if it's, trying to get rid of it and thinking that there's some way that you're going to reach this utopia, that it's just never going to be there. That's not reality. And so there's ways to manage it. And I love, there's physical things we can do, there's mental things we can do, and there's relational things that we can do to help us manage stress that we've talked about today. And so I just would, don't lie to ourselves that it's not there, and just be honest, so we can really deal with these things.
Wally really emphasized that stress is a constant presence in our life. And regardless of your profession, regardless of your wealth or any of your personal circumstances, the stress is not going away. And I think that's an important thing to acknowledge in this episode. I want you to identify any sources of stress and their impact on your family and on you as an individual, on your peers and on your colleagues. The way we respond impacts others. And so we have to be cognizant of how we deal with stress because of the impact on other people's lives. And then I really want you to try to implement a few of our suggestions so that it can possibly minimize your stress in your life. And can't emphasize enough the value of surrounding yourself with trusted advisors who can walk this journey with you, because we weren't created to be alone. We were created to be in community. And the reason we were created to be in community is so that we could have that view from the top that we're in pursuit of.
Hey, before we check out for the week, the easiest way to connect with us is in our email. It's pod@, at viewfromthetop.com. If you want to be reminded when these episodes come out every week in an email that kind of has a synopsis, go out and subscribe to what we call the Climb. So the Climb is actually, we put it out once a week. Once a month, it's a full newsletter. But then just every other week of the month, we just send you a notification when a new podcast episode comes out. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Go to viewfromthetop.com/climb. You can go ahead and register there to get that next issue that comes out this next week. So, man, thanks again for joining us. We'll see you all next week.